Welcome, friends, to Beyond the Crucible, the podcast that dares to talk about setback and failure, but not so we can commiserate. It's so we can elevate. I'm Gary Schneeberger, the co-host of the show, and our mission today is to offer you the hope that your crucible experiences, those setbacks and challenges that you faced or are facing right now, don't define you. They refine you. They did not happen to you, we believe. They happened for you. And I don't know many people who know that better than the founder of Beyond the Crucible, the host of this show, and my friend, Warwick Fairfax. Warwick, we are in the midst of, toward the back end of our series, Classic Films, Classic Crucible Lessons. And this is another robust discussion that's got some great insights in it, I think.
It certainly has. This is truly an epic film. Very much looking forward to the discussion.
Well, let's get started, folks. As I said, this is part of our Classic Films, Classic Crucible Lessons series. This is part 7 of the series, 9 parts altogether. We've got 2 more after this. And this one is on The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring. We'll explain where that falls in the trilogy of films in a bit, but let's talk a little bit about why we're doing a series on movies again. I say again because 2 years ago we did a series on heroic characters in films, whether they be sports heroes or action heroes or superheroes or historical heroes. And we had a good time doing that. And your reaction was pretty good to that. So we wanted to explore movies again because they can be, Warwick will explain why we're talking about movies in a bit. We wanted to do it again. And this time, though, we chose the American Film Institute's list of the 100 top U.S. films. We're not doing all 100 of them. Don't worry. That would be a really long series. We're doing 9 of them, as I said at the start. And this is chapter 7. This is part 7, which is on The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring. And that movie is number 50 on AFI's list of top 100 films. So smack in the middle of AFI's list. So, Warwick, I promised there that you talk a little bit about why we explore films. Why are we doing it? Why did we do it in the first place? Why are we doing it again? So why, from your perspective, are films such a ripe ground from which to cull lessons about bouncing forward from our crucibles?
With many films, certainly classic films, there's typically a protagonist up against long odds or a crisis that tests their character. And as we'll see here, that is certainly and epically the case in Lord of the Rings. The whole series, certainly this first one, The Fellowship of the Ring. And in some cases, the protagonists, they rise above their crucible and not defined by it. And other times they don't rise above their worst day, their toughest setback, and they are indeed defined by it. So that's why movies, which, often what you see is just some mythic, epic saga that might seem hard for a lot of us to relate to. But the point is, it gives a window into the testing of the soul and the testing of our characters. And I think what we've found from our assessment is everybody has gone through a crucible, a setback or failure that's so painful has fundamentally changed our lives. So crucibles, setbacks, and failures are just part of being human, and they do test our souls and our characters. And so learning from people who've gone through it, such as the epic tales in movies, it's a fertile ground to help us understand, how do you go through those? What is the difference between those who bounce forward and those who are defined by it? So it's a great place from which to discuss these, key moments of how you don't let your worst day define you.
And very good answer as always. And I've asked you that question now for all 7 episodes of this series. And it just occurred to me, the reason why I say I've done it, and it is the reason why I've done it, is to just level set listeners and viewers on why we're talking about it. But it's also because I love to hear you pronounce protagonist in that Australian way, whereas in America, we would say protagonist. So I just, every time I hear you say that, I'm like, oh, that just sounds so much better than when I say it. So,
well, as my kids would say, why do you say it that way? That's the way I say it in Australia. And I said, we've been to Australia. None of the rest of your family say that. So, but since you probably, don't really know the rest of my family in Australia that well, how would you know? But so let's just assume it's the Australian way.
Yeah, well, yeah. And there's something poetic about it that sounds a lot better than me with my Midwestern accent saying, hey, it's the protagonist. So yes, we're exploring protagonists or protagonists. Take your best pick there, folks. So let's talk about the movie. This movie, The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring, is based on all the Lord of the Rings movies, and we'll talk more about what all of them mean, are based on an epic fantasy novel by the author JRR Tolkien. It's set in what he calls Middle Earth, and the story began as a sequel to Tolkien's 1937 children's book, The Hobbit, but eventually developed into a much larger work on its own. It was written in stages, get this, folks, between 1937 and 1949. So he spent 12 years getting the Lord of the Rings right. And when if you've seen them, if you've read the books or you've seen the films, you understand why. He built entire languages and an entire ecosystem, an entire world. And he did it in great detail. So the fact that it took 12 years isn't really surprising. But here's something that did surprise me, Warwick, about it, that The Lord of the Rings is one of the best-selling books ever written, with over 150 million copies sold. That is incredible. And I can claim ownership of 2 of those copies. I have 2 separate editions. I have one all-contained edition, and I have all 3 of them in separate editions. But it's a very, very, very popular book. And that's one of the reasons why it was made into films, right? The movies were filmed and released as a trilogy by director Peter Jackson in 2001, 2002, and 2003. I can't believe that it's been more than 20 years since even the last of those movies has been produced. It seems not nearly that long ago. The Fellowship of the Ring is the first film in the series, and it lays the narrative groundwork for the more than 9 hours of movies that comprise the series. And folks, when I say 9 hours, that's before on home video, extended versions of the films were released at, sometimes close to 4 hours in duration. I once went, when I lived in Los Angeles, I went to a theater that showed back to back showings of all 3 films in one shot. And it took about 12 hours and I say get through, not in the sense that it was a slog, but to absorb it all, because it was really, really, as we hope you'll discover here as we talk about this first movie, The Fellowship of the Ring, we hope you'll understand just why they're so compelling. So Warwick, I've talked a lot. Let's start with a question here. As hinted at here, The Fellowship of the Ring's a long movie, but it's well worth the time and attention because it offers great lessons on what it takes and who it takes. Important point. What it takes and who it takes to overcome and navigate your way through a crucible. So before we really start talking about it in detail, hit some highlights about how the film does that.
Gary, what I love about this movie is so much of it is unexpected. It's not the way you would write a typical book or, script a typical movie. Because in one sense, the hero of this movie is the least likely of the main characters to be seen as the leader and most respected person in the story. If you saw these characters in a lineup, oh, clearly this is the leader. Let's say none of them opened their mouths. Oh, this one. You'd be like, no. This is the follower. This is, number 85 in the list, not number 1, and what's interesting is what makes this hero so respected is the purity of heart and motives that they have. That's what makes them stand out. And that's what I love about this movie, because it's some deep, rich lessons for us to learn. Now, this particular hero does not want this mission, desperately wishes somebody else could do it, not this person. They wish they didn't have to do it, but they accept the mission nonetheless, knowing it is their calling. It's a mission they don't want. It's a calling they don't want, but they realize it's their calling and their mission. And so we see time and again, and this is one of the keys to the movie, we see the purity of heart,
right,
and motives of the main character that attracts a team of fellow travelers around them. This team of fellow travelers that are very different than them. It's not like they're all carbon copies. This may be the least likely to succeed, least likely to be the hero. Well, these fellow travelers, for the most part, are the least likely to be fellow travelers of this particular character.
Yeah, and it is a rich cornucopia of folks who comprise that band of fellow travelers. Let's get into the film proper, and I'll say just off the bat, don't hold me to all the pronunciations here, folks. I said earlier that Tolkien took 12 years to create this universe, and it's just, exotically named, epically named places. So I might get a couple things mispronounced. I'm going to blame it on Wisconsin if that happens. But
Gary, I think what was happening why it took him 12 years is like, that name is too easy to pronounce. I got to go back to the drawing board. Until
Correct.
I can find something that no human on the planet can pronounce, then I'm not done. That's really why it was 12 and not like 10.
Yeah. That's probably true. And the true ardent fans, I mean, the people who are really sold out, they know the languages. They know everything broken down. It's really incredible. I'm not one of those people, but we're going to give it a shot. The story starts, folks, during the second age of Middle Earth, when the lords of the elves, dwarves, and men are given rings of power. Unbeknownst to them, the Dark Lord Sauron forges the One Ring in Mount Doom, instilling in it a great part of his power to dominate over the other rings and to conquer Middle Earth. That One Ring is the ring that he wants for himself, he keeps for himself, that will defeat all the other rings. So he gives out a bunch of rings of power and then creates a ring of the most power that he keeps for himself, for a while anyway. A final alliance of men and elves battles Sauron's forces in Mordor. That just sounds like a bad place to be, doesn't it? Mordor. Great job, Tolkien. Mordor just does not sound like a fun place to vacation. So yes, they battle Sauron's forces in Mordor. Isildur of Gondor severs Sauron's finger and the ring with it, thereby vanquishing Sauron and returning him to spirit form from physical form. With Sauron's first defeat, the third age of Middle Earth begins. The ring's influence corrupts Isildur, who takes it for himself and is later killed by orcs. Orcs are some creatures created by Sauron as his army. He's later killed by orcs. Isildur is. The ring is lost in a river for 2,500 years until it is found by Gollum, a mysterious creature who owns it over 4.5 centuries. The ring abandons Gollum and is subsequently found by a hobbit named Bilbo Baggins, who is unaware of its history. We will learn that hobbits are a people short in stature, and you'll learn more about their ways. They're very homebodies. They're not big adventurers, except Bilbo. Bilbo breaks out of that preconception in the book The Hobbit, and a little bit in this book here. 60 years after that, Bilbo celebrates his 111th birthday in the Shire, where the hobbits live. Reunited with his old friend, the wizard Gandalf the Grey. Bilbo departs the Shire for one last adventure, and he leaves his inheritance, including the ring, to his nephew, Frodo. Gandalf investigates the ring, discovers its true nature, and learns that Gollum was captured and tortured by Sauron's orcs, revealing 2 words during his interrogation: Shire and Baggins. Gandalf returns and warns Frodo to leave the Shire, because Gandalf knows that's not good stuff that's about to happen. Warwick, it's at this time in the story that Frodo has to make an important decision very early in this film. What is that decision?
So we see early in the movie, Gandalf comes back to the Shire, and he happens to see Frodo, who I think at the time is in Bilbo's house, and he sees him with the ring in his hand. Now, this ring, as we're going to see, has a tremendous corrupting influence. After all, it was created by Sauron, the evil Sauron of Mordor. And so he sees that it's in his hand, but it doesn't seem to be affecting him that much. So it really strikes Gandalf that this is unusual. And Gandalf has previously seen how the ring has affected Bilbo. We see in the early parts of the movie that Bilbo feels called to it, compelled, it's corrupting. He knows it's probably not good for him, but it's just almost an evil, a corruption that he can't resist. And so Gandalf knows full well the corrupting power of the ring. So Gandalf says that to Frodo that the evil forces of Mordor, they know that the ring is in the Shire, and they also know that Baggins has it. Gary, you just mentioned about how Gollum was tortured, and so Sauron and his minions, they kind of know where the ring is and the family that has it. And so Gandalf, knowing all this, says the ring must be taken away from the Shire because if Sauron gets the ring back, there'll be nothing stopping Sauron, and his evil forces will dominate and destroy all of Middle-earth. It's life or death for not just humanity, but civilization as we know it. So Frodo asks Gandalf, why can't he take it? At this point, Frodo knows nothing really about the ring other than what Gandalf just told him. Doesn't know it existed. And Gandalf says that the ring would basically corrupt even him. And with his powers, Gandalf fears that all of his powers could be used for evil. There's no way Gandalf can let that happen. So in these early stages of the movie, it's becoming clear that only Frodo can fulfill this mission to get the ring out of the Shire. And at this point, just to make sure that the evil forces of Sauron and Mordor don't get hold of the ring. So Frodo has to make a decision. He's in Bilbo's house, he's in the Shire, and Frodo has to make a decision about whether he should take the ring away. Now, Frodo doesn't really want to do this. He's lived his whole life in the Shire, at least as far as the movie shows you. I don't think he's ever been anywhere else. He likes, the life seems pretty idyllic in the Shire. These, rolling meadows and happy people. Why would you want to leave? But he realizes it's his calling and he has to do it. And in some sense, he feels it's his duty. People are depending on him. So he makes the decision to pick up the mantle, this ring, and try to stop the forces of evil getting it. Now, he doesn't really understand the ramifications of that decision. It's pretty early on, but it's pretty amazing that Frodo makes the decision to take the ring and to basically do what Gandalf has said. Early on in this movie, it shows you that Frodo is not a normal being, not a normal hobbit. He is somebody of courage, conviction. He's somebody that's you don't always find. He has to make a decision that would change the course of this movie and the rest of the movies. It's an inflection point in his life for sure.
Yeah, and it's interesting what you said about hobbits because, his uncle Bilbo, has an adventure, and you see in the opening scenes of the movie, people look at him, people aren't, they celebrate him because it's his birthday, but they're kind of like, some character says at one point, the Bagginses used to be respectable until Bilbo went and had an adventure. So it's not innate to a hobbit's makeup to do the kind of thing that Frodo just decided to do. And the other then part of it is, that ring. Let's talk about what's written on the ring because Gandalf reads the Elvish, the elf language in which the ring was emblazoned. This is what it says in the common tongue. It says, one ring to rule them all, one ring to find them, one ring to bring them all, and in the darkness bind them. So this is what Frodo's dealing with, when he makes this decision. My people aren't exactly adventurous people. I like the Shire, and this ring sounds really scary. Those are the things that he knows at the point that he makes that decision, right? It's not something that he can take lightly.
No, it's so well said. I mean, stay in the Shire and these beautiful rolling hills, which I'm sure many probably know was shot in New Zealand. I think Peter Jackson, the creator of this whole movie, was from New Zealand, I believe. So it's understandable that you want to shoot the movie there. But it's just so idyllic. Why would you leave the Shire to take on the forces of evil, and the inscriptions read, and it's like, bind them all together in evil? Is like, I don't know, evil doesn't sound fun. It sounds scary and dangerous. Maybe somebody else can do that. Let somebody else save the world. But Gandalf basically makes clear there is no somebody else.
Right.
It's you. It's your calling. So he can still say, yeah, nah, I'm staying in the Shire. But hey, good luck. See ya.
Yeah.
But he doesn't.
And he doesn't. And as we'll see, folks, he has a couple of times when he takes a step forward, takes a step back. You'll see the struggle that goes on within Frodo as we talk. But what happens next is that Frodo departs the Shire with his friend, the gardener Samwise Gamgee. And again, to speak to how hobbits aren't adventurous folk, as they're walking out of the Shire, and they're not like out of it yet, they're just on the outer edges of it. Samwise says, okay, wait, stop here. If I take one more step, this will be the farthest I've ever been away from home in my life, right? That's how unaccustomed to quote unquote adventure hobbits generally are. But they do depart. Gandalf rides to Isengard to meet with the wizard Saruman, but discovers his betrayal, Saruman's betrayal, and alliance with Sauron, who has dispatched his 9 undead Nazgul, who are dark cloaked figures on horses, to find Frodo. Frodo and Sam are joined by fellow hobbits Merry and Pippin, and they evade the Nazgul before arriving in Bree, where they're meant to meet Gandalf. And Warwick and I both talked about this before we got on this call. In the Inn of the Prancing Pony, which sounds like in any place, Middle Earth or any Earth, sounds like a kind of a fun place to go. The Prancing Pony, they're supposed to meet there, but Gandalf never arrives, having been taken prisoner by Saruman. And the hobbits are then aided by a ranger named Strider, who promises to escort them to Rivendell. Strider makes clear to Frodo that what he carries is more than a ring. It is a burden, a heavy, dangerous calling. Are you frightened? He asks Frodo at one point. Yes, Frodo says, stating the obvious that we'd all probably say. And then Strider says this, not nearly frightened enough, because I know what hunts you. Warwick, this scene spotlights just how much bouncing forward beyond our crucible requires courage. We can face uncertain circumstances, but we can't allow ourselves to be dissuaded from facing them head on, can we?
No, it's so true. I mean, this wasn't a mission that Frodo wanted back in the Shire. It's like, well, the whole forces of evil sounds pretty scary, but I think it's my calling. Well, now the sounds pretty scary is no longer a theory. They just had to, get away from the Nazgul, these cloaked figures on these black horses, these dark horses. Somehow they escape. And, Strider, says to Frodo, are you frightened? And as you say, Frodo says, yes, well, not nearly frightened enough. So it's like, okay, you mean there's worse than what we've just been through? That was pretty scary. Sounds like it could actually get even worse. How worse can it be? He's probably thinking to himself. So really what that shows is, Frodo took on this mission to stop the forces of evil, getting the ring, but it's no longer a theory anymore. Now he's beginning to realize how dangerous this mission is. He's been chased by these really scary creatures, the Nazgul. But what's interesting is he's not dissuaded from pursuing his mission. He knows this is his calling. People are relying on him. People depend on him. And he's come to realize only he can fulfill this mission. One lesson that we can learn from Frodo is that courage is fueled by the importance of the mission and the knowledge that only we can fulfill that mission. And courage is also fueled by belief and passion for the mission. So when you know this mission is important, we're talking about the whole of known civilization. It all depends on me. I'm passionate about this mission. We have to do it. That kind of belief in the vision and your mission can really help fuel courage that you never knew you had to overcome obstacles and crucibles that you thought there's no way I or anybody can overcome it, but certainly not me, this hobbit from the Shire. You don't tend to think of getting superheroes from central casting in the Shire.
Right.
Hey, we're going to do a Superman here or Iron Man, or pick your favorite superhero movie. Let's see if we can find a great hero in the Shire amongst the hobbits. It's just not where you go for casting calls.
Right, for sure. And as the Nazgul track him and try to capture him, because they were tipped off by Gollum, right? That's where he's in. He's in the Shire. It's an interesting thing, and we haven't talked about this beforehand, Warwick, but there's a couple times that while he has the ring, Frodo does use it. And one time is as the Nazgul are trying to find him. He's trying to hide from them, and he realizes that if he just puts the ring on his finger, he'll disappear. He'll vanish. He'll become invisible. And he does that to hide, but these really scary, screechy, dark figures, poke around, their horses sniff around, and they stab him, and he gets stabbed with this blade that is a very, special, evil blade. And he's injured, and he's close to actually dying. And that's when Arwen, who's an elf and Strider's beloved, locates Strider and rescues Frodo. She summons floodwaters that sweep the Nazgul away. She takes him to Rivendell, her home, where he is healed by the elves. Frodo meets with Gandalf, who has escaped Isengard on a great eagle. So we've got a lot of people kind of getting together in Rivendell. That night, Strider, who we come to discover is actually Aragorn, who's the rightful heir to Gondor, the kingdom of men, reunites with Arwen, and they affirm their love for each other. Learning of Saruman's betrayal from Gandalf, and now realizing that they're facing threats from both Sauron and Saruman, Arwen's father, Lord Elrond, decides against keeping the ring in Rivendell. Let's stop on that point for a second. Okay? Lord Elrond, who was around, right? He's old enough to have been around when the ring was first cast, when that first battle took place, when Sauron was defeated. Elrond doesn't want the ring in Rivendell, but Frodo, the Hobbit, not the Lord, not the warrior, Frodo the Hobbit's like, okay, he's carrying it. So he decides against, Elrond does, keeping the ring in Rivendell. He holds a council, and that council includes elves, including Legolas, a very talented archer. It includes men, including Boromir, who's the son of the temporary leader of Gondor, and of dwarves, which includes the rather humorous movie. The movie that we're talking about here, folks, there's lots of evil and lots of scary things going on and lots of epic things. You got to have a little comic relief. And Gimli, the dwarf, is a little bit of that. He's a warrior. He's gruff. He wields an axe, but he's also part of this council that Lord Elrond calls. And it's also attended by Frodo and Gandalf. And they all decide together that the ring, this evil ring, must be destroyed in the fires of Mount Doom. And there's a key point here where Frodo steps up and into his calling fully at this point. He becomes, if not off the charts passionate about a vision, he becomes off the charts committed to a life of significance that he has been charged with. It all plays out powerfully in this clip that we're about to play for you, folks. Here it is.
I will take the ring to Mordor. I do not know the way.
I will help you bear this burden, Frodo Baggins, as long as it is yours to bear.
If by my life or death I can protect you, I will. You have my sword. And you have my bow.
And my axe.
Warwick, this scene is really a moving depiction of the courage it takes to follow a life of significance, isn't it? Of being so committed to a worthy cause that you face your misgivings head on. It's also amazing as we watch this clip, who becomes the leader of the group that becomes to be known as the Fellowship of the Ring, isn't it?
Absolutely, Gary. I mean, this is a remarkable scene. You have this council assembled in Rivendell, which is this beautiful town community set amidst this incredible, valley. It's just a magical place. And these are esteemed warriors. You've got, Lord Elrond, the leader of the elves. You've got, Legolas, also an elf and an archer. You've got these great warriors from Gondor, Boromir, and Aragorn, and then even Gimli, who's a dwarf with warrior with an axe. I mean, all these people are great warriors. Gandalf is older but incredibly wise. You could pick from a number of them to be the obvious leader, but yet that's not what happens. As you see in this clip, you'll see Frodo begin to whisper, I'll take it. They realize somebody needs to take this ring. The only way of destroying the ring, which we now know, is in the fires of Mount Doom. There's no other way. No other way. As long as that ring exists, the danger is Sauron will get it and destroy all of the known world. So they know what has to be done. Take the ring to the fires of Mount Doom in Mordor. The mission is crystal clear now. And so they're wondering, well, who's going to do this? And you just hear this whisper from Frodo, and eventually he has to say it louder because people are just chatting with each other and trying to figure out what the heck are we going to do here. And he says, I'll take it. And they suddenly fall silent. It's like, what? Who? You?
Right.
I mean, they're thinking to themselves. And he says, I will take the ring to Mordor. And now he obviously needs help. He's never been there. He's never been out of the Shire. So, he needs help finding anywhere, basically, other than in the Shire. So what's kind of remarkable is who becomes the leader. It's not the heroic warriors that we talked about. It's a hobbit. It's Frodo. He's small in stature. He's not a warrior by trade. I mean, he doesn't have the supernatural wisdom or magical powers like Gandalf. What does he bring to the party? It would seem nothing. What are the skills and talents he has that would merit him leading this group? It would seem like the answer is nothing. But what makes the other people in this group, which we find out that they call themselves the Fellowship of the Ring, hence the name of this particular movie in the Lord of the Rings series, what makes this group, this Fellowship of the Ring, look to Frodo as their leader is he's the only person capable of holding the ring and overcoming its evil. And so they, I think, come to realize, too, that the secret is really Frodo's purity of heart and courage.
Yep.
As we'll find out, various ones of them attempted. They cannot withstand the ring's allure, the ring's power. They realize Frodo's secret weapon is his purity of heart and his courage, even though courage is hard to have when you try to do away with this evil ring and fight the evil forces of Sauron and Mordor. But if ever there's somebody that should not have courage, it's Frodo from the Shire. You know, it's the least likely to succeed. He's the least likely to have courage, you would think. But Frodo is committed to the mission. He's passionate about it, even though he's fearful. And by now, you know, he clearly doesn't want this mission. But that's the epitome of true courage. When you may be passionate about the mission, you're fearful of it, and you really don't want it. So that's why they see Frodo as their leader. He had these pure motives, his courage where you wouldn't expect he would have courage. And that's what allowed the Fellowship of the Ring, his fellow travelers, so to speak, to be 100% committed to Frodo and protecting him. One after the other, they all say, I'll go, I'll protect Frodo, because protecting Frodo protects him and protects the ring. It's truly remarkable. What would bind these people, these warriors, to be fellow travelers, to see Frodo as their leader, and to do everything they can to protect him? It's one of the most remarkable scenes you'll see in a movie anywhere, Frodo being the leader and his team of fellow travelers, the Fellowship of the Ring, being 100% committed to the mission and to protecting Frodo at all costs, even if it means their lives.
Right. That scene that we watched, just all of them at the end, right? You'll have my axe, you'll have my bow, you'll have my sword. I mean, I want to grab the ring and go follow him myself when I watch that. It's that inspirational. And that's the kind of inspiration that purity of heart, that bravery, that courage in Frodo inspires in the Fellowship, his fellow travelers. What happens next then is that the Fellowship of the Ring, as they have christened themselves, makes for the Gap of Rohan, but discovers it's being watched by Saruman's spies. So instead, they set off over a mountain pass of a place I can't pronounce, Karadaharas. But Saruman summons a storm that forces them to travel through the mines of Moria, where a tentacled water beast blocks off the entrance with the Fellowship inside, giving them no choice but to journey to the exit on the other end. The key point here, I think, Warwick, is that, you know, Frodo, we said he's pure of heart, he's brave, but he has 2 steps forward, 1 step back moments. And this is one of those. He's unnerved by being given the ring. He doesn't yet understand all the ramifications of what he's been tasked to do or the importance of what he's been entrusted to do. He's a little leery about it. And there's a dialogue here, Warwick, a discussion here in which Gandalf shows such wisdom and actually finds a way of encouraging Frodo about the mission and his calling that Frodo has. What is that exchange, and how does that encourage Frodo to get over this little bit of check in his throat that he's not sure he's up to going forward? We have this wonderful scene with Gandalf and Frodo where here they are deep in the mines under this mountain. Things are not looking too hopeful or promising. They don't know what scary creatures await them other than the fact it's Sauron and Mordor, and you know it's going to be bad and scary, and it's just a matter of time before, Sauron's not going to give up. He wants that ring. Right. There's this remarkable dialogue in which Frodo says to Gandalf that he wished the ring had never come to him. It's almost spiritual. I mean, the Bible talks about, take that cup away from me, not my will, but yours. I mean, it's a very spiritual concept, is I really don't want this mission. Please, not me. And Gandalf says, basically everybody says that, all say that, but that is not, for them to decide. That's not for you to decide. The ring has been given to you. All we have to do is decide what to do with the time that is given us. There are other forces at work besides the forces of evil. Bilbo was meant to find the ring. Therefore, you were also meant to find the ring. That is an encouraging thought, that Gandalf says. So basically, what he's saying is, you've been presented with this calling, forces at work beyond our comprehension, if you will, have made that decision. Bilbo was always meant to find the ring. And therefore, you also, when you saw the ring in Bilbo's house, were meant to have it, were meant to find it.
And therefore, because all of this was laid out, in some sense, there is a force at work here, a powerful force, a force for good in a sense. I think it's the implicit thought that Gandalf is saying, and that should give you some comfort. So what we learn here is that it is Frodo's calling. It is his mission to protect the ring from the evil Sauron. It's both his calling and his crucible. And it's an interesting point here that very often our calling and our crucible are inextricably entwined. So I think the point that Gandalf is making is not for us to decide the mission that is presented to us. It's not for us to decide our calling. If you believe in a higher purpose, our calling is presented to us. It's laid out to us. Our task is to decide, well, what do we do with that calling? Do we accept it? Do we ignore it? And so Gandalf is saying, being the protector of the ring, that was always meant to be Frodo's mission and calling, almost before time began. So in a sense, from a spiritual and faith perspective, when we feel like we're following a calling that has been laid out for us, that we were always meant for this calling, somehow this is encouraging, because I think we can feel if this calling was always meant for us, then we'll be given the strength to carry it out. I think it's possible when Gandalf says that this is an encouraging thought, that we were always meant to find, that Frodo was always meant to have the ring, that I think Gandalf is saying, if this was always meant to happen, then there will be a way through this crucible, that you will be supported, maybe from beyond our comprehension, from a higher force, and from other people. Somehow this, I think, did encourage Frodo. So it's an amazing discussion of which so much is said in a relatively short period of time.
And that, again, as you pointed out, those are all of us at some point in our lives as we go through crucibles. All of us are Frodo, right? All of us are committed, but all of us are also a little scared sometimes, and they can come in waves. So excellent unpacking of that scene, because there is, we don't all live in Middle Earth where orcs are after us and all of those things, but there are their own pitfalls that we all encounter. And it's important when you feel like Frodo to have a Gandalf, I think.
It's such a good point. And the other thing is, often when we see superhero movies, look, we enjoy them. They're a lot of fun and we can learn lessons from them. But we might say, I really don't feel like Superman, Iron Man, any of these Batman, any of these great characters. There aren't that many of us that say, I'm not nearly as strong or brave or of physical stature of Frodo. I'm just smaller, frailer, less adventurous than Frodo. Really? He's never left the Shire. So in that sense, Frodo is a relatable character. We can't really say, no, I am weaker, more fearful, less adventurous than Frodo at the very beginning of the movie. It's like, not really. So Frodo can do it. Forget the cosmic level of the challenge in the broad sense of the word. If Frodo can do it, have courage, I think maybe we should consider that we should have courage to overcome our crucibles.
Absolutely. And there's going to be more crucibles coming, folks, because after this exchange happens that Warwick just talked about, then the Fellowship finds the dwarves of Moria dead, and the Fellowship is attacked by orcs and a cave troll. They hold them off, but are confronted by Durin's Bane, a Balrog, which is a large, fiery, demon-like figure residing within the mines. While the others escape, Gandalf fends off Balrog and casts it into a vast chasm. Great line in the movie, I'll never forget. He always says, "Thou shalt not pass," right? He stops the Balrog from going through. Very, very, very moving scene. But it becomes even more moving as it ends, because the Balrog drags Gandalf down into the darkness with him. The devastated Fellowship, having lost Gandalf, reaches Lothlorien, ruled by the elf queen Galadriel, who privately informs Frodo that only he can complete the quest, and that one of the Fellowship one of his fellow travelers, will try to take the ring. She also shows him a vision of the future in which Sauron succeeds in enslaving Middle-earth, including his beloved Shire. Meanwhile, Saruman creates an army of Uruk-hai, a combination of orcs and trees that he creates to be his big army in Isengard to find and kill the Fellowship. This big army, their sole task is to find and kill the Fellowship. Warwick, it's at this time again that there's another conversation, another dialogue that's very meaningful, this time between Galadriel and Frodo, which talks about his mission and gives us more information about the challenge that the very brave, sometimes very scared Hobbit faces, right?
Absolutely. So here we have this elf queen in Lothlorien, Galadriel, and she's sort of this fascinating person, just has this sort of all white kind of glow, ethereal look to her in her clothing and her demeanor. And, she says to Frodo that the quest stands on the edge of a knife, the quest to ensure basically the evil forces of Sauron don't get the ring. But yet she says, yet hope remains while company is true. I think by this she means hope remains while you have a team of fellow travelers who are united by a noble cause, something like that. And Frodo says he can't do this alone. And then she says something that's actually not that encouraging, to be honest. She says, to be the ring bearer, to have the ring of power, is to be alone. It's like, well, thank you so much.
Yeah, right.
The task was appointed to you. If you don't find a way, no one will. So again, not quite at the Gandalf level of encouragement here, but she's, you can have a team of fellow travelers, but ultimately the mission is up to you. It's your mission. They can help you, they can encourage you, but you can still have fellow travelers and still feel alone, like, I really wish I wasn't the leader here. I really wish I wasn't the leader of this mission. Can't it be somebody else? So yeah, you can still have fellow travelers and be alone in some strange irony. So Frodo says this, I know what I must do. It's just that I'm afraid to do it. Talk about transparent vulnerability. He's very clear. I know what I've got to do. I just really don't want to do this, That's when Galadriel says something so amazing. She says, even the smallest person can change the course of the future. Basically, it's not the size of the person, the size of their capability, their talents that determine success. Even the smallest hobbit, basically from the Shire, he's never been anywhere, can change the course of history, is basically what she's saying. So that is daunting, but also, I think, encouraging. So I think there's just so much wisdom, as we've said. It's great to have a team of fellow travelers, but you can still feel alone. There's this burden. But Frodo is very honest about saying, look, I know what I should do. I really wish it wasn't me because I'm afraid. But yet, she basically says, you might feel like the least likely to lead this mission, but I think she's encouraging to say that this is his calling and he can fulfill it. Maybe she, from her perspective, realizes maybe there's a cosmic force at work, and history has cases where those you would think least likely to succeed find a way to succeed. Maybe there are forces that will help you. So again, in her own way, there's a mix of discouragement, encouragement, brutal honesty, but still there's some important lessons for Frodo and I think for all of us to learn from this dialogue between Galadriel and Frodo.
Indeed. We'll continue on with the quest, the journey. The Fellowship travels to Parth Galen. Frodo wanders off and is confronted by Boromir, who, as Lady Galadriel said, tries to take the ring. The Uruk-hai scouts then ambush ambushes the Fellowship, attempting to abduct the hobbits. Boromir breaks free of the ring's magic and protects the hobbits Merry and Pippin, but the Uruk-hai leader, Lurtz, mortally wounds Boromir as they abduct the hobbits. Aragorn then arrives and kills Lurtz before comforting Boromir as he dies, promising to help the people of Gondor in the coming conflict. Fearing the ring will corrupt his friends, Frodo decides to travel to Mordor alone. But Sam finds him and proclaims, I made a promise, Mr. Frodo, a promise. Don't you leave him, Samwise Gamgee. And I don't mean to. I don't mean to. Warwick, that's a pretty spot-lit example of what being a good fellow traveler is, as well as showing Frodo's courage, isn't it?
It's so true. And this is now towards the end of the movie. Here you have Frodo on the edge of this river, and he's about to get in the boat and go over to the other side. And, leading up to this, Frodo has made the courageous decision to take this ring to Mordor and to take it alone. His scene, how the ring can have such a corrupting effect. And right before, these group of, evil forces, led by Lurtz and the Uruk-hai, start waging battle against the Fellowship of the Ring. We see Boromir just wanted to touch the ring. He just wants to hold it. And as he gets close to it, it begins to corrupt him. We see there are times in which he's fearful and anxious, and he does break free. But this is a warning to Frodo. It makes Frodo realize this ring is so dangerous. It can corrupt great warriors, brave warriors. Even Aragorn, we see that none of the folks that are with Frodo at this point, none of them could really handle the evil of the ring. And so Frodo, in an incredibly courageous decision, wants to make sure his mission succeeds, but he also wants to care for his fellow travelers. They want to be with him, but he doesn't want this ring to corrupt them and destroy them. And so he puts his dedication to the cause, to destroying the ring in, the fires of Mount Doom and Mordor, above his desire to have friends and supporters with him. It's incredibly selfless. And his team, in large part, agrees with him. The reluctantly, Aragorn and some of the others, Gimli, basically realize, Frodo's right. We can't withstand the forces of the ring. It is the best thing, reluctantly they realize, for Frodo to go on alone. And there's another key beat to this scene in which Frodo, he's on the boat, he's launched from the river, he's about to go from one riverbank to the other side, and Sam rushes through the underbrush, rushes down the hill to Frodo. And as you said, Gary, he's made a promise never to leave Frodo's side. And he's going to honor that commitment no matter what. Now, he tries to swim out to Frodo's boat, but, he's in the Shire. I don't know how many ponds are there. We don't quite know, but basically, Sam can't swim.
Right.
But he does anyway. So he goes out to swim, and he almost drowns. And he knows he can't swim, but he's not really thinking about, gosh, I can't swim, therefore, why should I do this? It's like, I'm here to help my friend Frodo. I'm going to do whatever it takes to be by his side. And so he almost drowns. It takes Frodo to jump in and rescue him. So that's an incredible tale of a fellow traveler. Somebody who's willing to risk their own life to be by Frodo's side. And Frodo is grateful for Sam, his dedication. He needs a friend. I mean, he's doing the selfless thing to say to the rest of the team, look, don't come with me. This ring is so corrupting. I have to do this alone. But Sam risks his life to be with Frodo, and he will happily accept Sam's encouragement and support. It's a tremendous example of a fellow traveler who will be with you thick and thin, no matter what. Sam's going to be by Frodo's side. It's an incredible scene.
Yeah, and that entire scene shows the growth and development of Frodo. Because go back to when you talked about when he does leave and he makes the decision to go, and Aragorn is one of them who reluctantly agrees. Okay, that's probably the right thing, but he does say to Frodo, as Frodo's saying goodbye, Aragorn says, "I swore to protect you," and Frodo, showing the wisdom he's picked up along the journey, says, "Can you protect me from yourself?" He asks Aragorn. And Frodo then says, "Would you destroy it?" Meaning the ring. And the ring whispers to Aragorn. And Aragorn closes Frodo's hand around the ring and says, "I would have gone with you to the end, to the very fires of Mordor." And he doesn't say it in a way that like he's hurt. He says it in a way of reassurance, but understanding as well. I just think that's another beautiful take on what goes on here and on Frodo's growth for sure. And that, at this point, folks, the Fellowship is split up. Frodo and Sam are going one direction. The other folks are going the other direction. And their journey, their quest will conclude over the next two films in the series. The second film, The Two Towers, and the culmination of it all, The Return of the King, over the next 2 years in terms of real-time release back in the day. So we've still got 6 hours of motion picture coming up, folks, that you can, if this was intriguing to you, to check that out. But Warwick, since the parameters of our discussion are on this first movie, 50th on the list of AFI's top 100, and I know it was hard for you to pick one, so I think you might have snuck in a 1 and a 1A in your one big takeaway that you hope folks take from this movie.
What's remarkable about Frodo is it shows that heroes can come in unexpected packages. As we see Frodo, he just seems like the least likely to succeed, the least likely to be a warrior. He doesn't have special knowledge or in of himself, special strength.
Yeah, he's the least likely to leave his neighborhood, right? I mean, that's Frodo Baggins.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, would you have him lead your team, your softball team,
right.
Little League? I mean, any kind of team?
Right.
No, he'd be the last called on the team, might even make the team.
Right. I
think what's also remarkable is Frodo, in some ways, is the least likely to lead the Fellowship of the Ring, his team of fellow travelers. I mean, these are great warriors, people who've done battle into themselves. Each member of the Fellowship of the Ring, they are great leaders. They're heroes into themselves. How these team of fellow travelers, this team of heroes, would see Frodo as the leader is remarkable. And so when you think about it, why do you have this hobbit from the Shire? Hobbits don't go anywhere. They're not adventurous. Really, the key asset that Frodo has, and the reason that his team of fellow travelers, the Fellowship of the Ring, follow him, is because of the purity of heart that he has and the selfless devotion to a mission that's vitally important. Everybody knows that Frodo doesn't want this, that Frodo is frightened, but he does it anyway. True courage is when you pursue a mission that's beyond yourself, that you're scared stiff about, and you don't want, and you don't think that you have any special powers or ability to succeed in this mission. That will engender enormous respect and admiration, even devotion. And so as you look at this movie and Frodo, the key lesson is following a calling that you feel is beyond yourself, that you feel that maybe somebody up there, some higher purpose, some higher power is calling you to, and you have the belief, if this is what you've been truly called to, that there will be a way that you can achieve it. There will be a way through the crucibles that are inevitable in following a noble cause, and that purity of heart will attract fellow travelers who believe in the mission and believe in you. Fellow travelers don't just follow anybody. They follow people they admire and respect. And if ever there was somebody in a movie that is worthy of respect, it's Frodo Baggins.
And that, folks, is the sign. Warwick's great summary there. The closing credits are rolling. It is indeed time to end our discussion of the Fellowship of the Ring. But as we let you go, we'll do what we've done in every episode of the series, and we will continue to do, is what's the point of reflection? What can you reflect on from this? And there's a lot. I mean, Warwick unpacked a lot about this film that you can apply to your crucibles and how you move beyond them. But here's the one reflection that we leave you with today, and that's this. How have you faced down your fear in pursuit of your calling? What helps you to do it? And truly importantly, how can you make sure you apply what you learned the next time it might happen? What will be the lesson that you take away from facing down your fear and still moving forward to pursue your vision of the life of significance? Until the next time we're together, please remember, we'll be back next week with another episode of our series, and we will save a seat for you. Welcome to a journey of transformation with the Beyond the Crucible assessment. Unlike any other, this tool is designed to guide you from adversity to achievement. As you answer a few insightful questions, you won't just find a label like the helper or the individualist. Instead, you'll uncover your unique position in the journey of resilience. This assessment reveals where you stand today, the direction you should aim for, and crucially, the steps to get there. It's more than an assessment. It's a roadmap to a life of significance. Ready? Visit beyondthecrucible.com. Take the free assessment and start charting your course to a life of significance today.